Welcome everyone. Today is Sprint 56, codename Barium, or it's Friday, so maybe Barium after work. Fleet 4.84.0. I'm going to hand it over to George in the MDN product group.
Alrighty, kicking us off first is a very anticipated feature. Magnus is going to be showing us ACME certificates for enrollment into macOS.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a full team effort. So not only me, it's the entire team. It was good work. I will demo the feature here real quickly. Hi, everyone. Today I will be demoing this story, which is the ACME for the MDM protocol and delivering certificates on that part. So the user story is the following. As a security engineer, I want Fleet to use ACME certificates for MDM protocol communication so that I know Fleet is using the most secure method when communicating with hosts. And the idea of the story is, of course, enhanced security, but the more specific part is that with ACME and Apple here, you can do what's called device attestation, meaning a hardware-bound key on the device, which is totally secure, can be used to validate the certificate, and the host getting the certificate, knowing that the certificate we're issuing and the certificate we're seeing from this host has been verified that this is actually the host we want it to be. So with that in mind, there is a simple change in the UI, which is this new checkbox under Settings, Organization Settings, Advanced Options, which is Require Hardware Attestation. And this is required for the ACME flow because currently we're only supported with hardware attestation. So you need this. You need a MacBook that has the Apple Silicon because that's required. And it also needs to be running macOS 14 or later. So if we fulfill these criteria, which we do on this device here, we can start the enrollment process. And it functions the same, and there's no flashy change here. It's basically the enrollment profile, and the flow it goes through is different for the certificate stuff. And on this part, I can also highlight that the speed up, the ticket mentioned, is also helping here because with that, we run it more frequently. So the checks for releasing the device or starting to send profiles, in this case, I don't have any, just happens ever so slightly faster. So while we wait for this, we might be able to see some ACME URLs coming in. This is a local tool I built. It's just a random one, don't mind it. But as you can see here, this is from the device, and you can see it's communicating on these ACME endpoints that we built out. And this is the general flow that it goes through. So it gets a directory, it creates an account in order, and it's based on the system. And it then challenges, and then it downloads the certificate to use. So we can see here the device did go through ACME and did not go through the skip flow. And then I'll just speed it up a bit until it's ready. All right, so now we can see that it completed the enrollment, and I can create an account here. Let's just do a dummy account. Okay, and now the device is unlocked and we are in. So if we go in and check the MDM certificate that we're actually using to communicate with Fleet in this case, we can indeed see here that it says it's an ACME certificate. It's a hardware bound key and it communicates with my Fleet instance. And then the last part here is on the host itself. If we go in, what we then should see now is, of course, it's MDM enrolled, but what we also see now, which will only show if it's true, is this MDM attestation, which says yes. And it basically said they provided a hardware attestation at the point of enrollment. An extra side note is that if you have a device that's currently using SCEP and it comes up on the certificate renewal period, if it fulfills the criteria mentioned earlier, it will actually enroll with the new ACME certificate instead of just keeping using SCEP. So it was a huge team effort from the MDM team, so it's a great one. Thanks. Yeah, so that's a great one. And while I did mention in the video, I might just jump down to the speed up macOS profile delivery, which was an attempt to speed up. And we did see some improvements at around like a worst case, we could cut off like a minute. And the idea is the cron jobs running is now running on a faster frequency. Plus, we're also delivering the profiles as soon as we see the first check-in from the device rather than waiting on this specific profile reconciliation logic we have normally. So that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Magnus. I know a lot of people are really excited about that one. Next up, we've got Jordan.
Thanks, George. I just have a couple of quick things to chat about. I do not have demos for either of these. One is a POC, and one is just a small kind of background improvement. So this background improvement is to periodically clean up the nano tables so they don't grow unreasonably large. Our user story is, as a fleet developer, I want to periodically clean old refetch entries from nano commands, nano enrollment queue, and nano command results so that I can trust querying those tables stays performant. And this helps solve a problem we've seen where the way that we use refetch commands on iOS and iPadOS, we're sending these commands out, the tables are growing every time, and we were never cleaning them up, so the tables were becoming unperformant. Now in the background, we delete, for every command that comes back, we delete 3 old entries, and they're a month old or more. And so the idea is basically we delete some old entries that are less relevant to keep the tables performant and to avoid the problem where customers have large numbers of iPhones or iPads, and several months down the road, they start having issues with performance. Like I said, this is just a background thing. There's no real user-facing portion to it. It's a kind of quality of life improvement for developers and contributors. And this second one is something we attempted to POC. We pulled it into the sprint, mid-sprint, to try to figure out if we could support this autopilot technician flow. And I've pulled up the autopilot technician flow docs here, but the basic idea of the technician flow is that unlike the normal autopilot flow where a user gets a device and they log in and then it runs through installing all their apps, configuration profiles, things like that, that can take 35 minutes or an hour. A hardware vendor can have a technician open the device. They can press the Windows key 5 times and press a button. And if the device is properly registered with autopilot, as Microsoft calls out here, it will essentially use TPM hardware attestation to talk to Azure, register with an MDM server, and install devices or install applications and things in the background. Unfortunately, what we ran into with this is that it works with Intune, but nothing that we could do would get it to work with Fleet. And so we've contacted Microsoft on this. We're trying to get more details. I've called out some of the lessons learned here. I actually went and bought physical hardware because we learned that it doesn't work on certain types of physical hardware. It doesn't work on VMs. You have to have physical hardware. It has to be running Windows 11 Pro. It has to be registered in Azure. What seems to be the case is that either there's some sort of undocumented configuration that needs to be made by Microsoft or some sort of undocumented configuration, because there's no docs on configuring this with a third-party MDM. So hopefully we'll get some updates and maybe at some point be able to share more updates on this. But this is something we're working on and hoping to support at some point in the future and hoping to pick this up. But what we found was even after several attempts, we just were not able to get this to work with Fleet, even though the same device worked with Intune. So thank you.
Awesome. That concludes the MDM team features. We'll be moving on to the software features, starting with Carlo.
All right. Thank you, George. Let me just get set up here. Okay. Can you give me a thumbs up that you're seeing the VPP? Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Cool. So this one is improve error message when VPP install fails for a large app. The user story is, as an IT admin, I want to see an easy to understand error message when large VPP apps fail so that I can know failure was due to a timeout. And so this is about more specificity in particular error states, essentially. And so this shows a more generic error for VPP app install failures. And then we can see under the specific conditions that we're targeting here, where the installation times out, we can see more specific errors in the correct locations. So that's a small enhancement there. And then this one is work done by Jonathan, and this one is about running Python scripts on macOS and Linux. So as an IT admin, I want to add a Python script to Fleet so that I can run it on my macOS and Linux hosts. So the idea here is you can add a script in the same way you would with a shell script to control scripts, and you can run them in batch, you can attach them to policies, and so on. So we'll just go over here, and I'll show what that looks like. So if we go into controls, scripts, we can see that I have one all set up here. You can see it just prints out a friendly message. So we can come in here and see an example of a failing script run. We get an error message that's much the same as the other error messages we see for other failures. And then we can see a success state, and then we can see a policy run. Oops, not this one. So what I can do is go over to controls, scripts, and I'll just add another script here. And we can see here we have shell and Python support for macOS and Linux. So I'll choose my file, open it, add the script, then I'll go to policies, and I'll add a policy. And what I want to do here is just check to see that a certain file exists. And so I'll save that. Can use our nifty autofill tool. Okay. And I'll uncheck these, although this feature does work on Linux as well. All right, then I'll go to policies and manage automation scripts. I'll select the policy I just created, select my new script, save that out. And then I can go into hosts. And we should see that upcoming activity show up soon. I'll just show you the file doesn't exist on the desktop there. So we should expect to see the new file appear here once the policy has run. And in the meantime, what I can do is show you. All right, let's see, we can come in here and just take a look at these. So you can see the contents of this one and this one. So you can edit, delete all the things that you would expect to do as it is. And you would also be able to see batch progress here and so on. I can also select from here and run scripts. I can choose which script I want to run. I can run this one, run now, or schedule for later. Let's go in here and we can see we have the upcoming activity. And this might be the successful activity here. Oh, yep, there it is. This file was created by a Python policy automation. So that is running Python scripts on macOS and Linux. Really nice job, Jonathan.
Next up, we've got Rachel with a couple of features.
Hey everybody, I'm going to be presenting a full stack feature that Haziel had built by himself, and I have a video for you guys.
This video is going to go over 39916, which is custom scope for software to add labels include all. So our user story is, as an IT admin, I want to use the labels include all custom scope for software so that I can use labels to roll out changes gradually to all of my hosts. So this is in addition to some current scoping that we do with targeting hosts for software installers. And this is specifically a customer request. So I'm going to go ahead and show you on our Fleet UI how this works. So when you go to software and as a premium user on a specific fleet, so I'm going to go to workstations, I will add a software here. And this works for fleet maintained apps, apps or apps, and custom packages. I'm going to add one password. And when I'm adding one password, I'm going to click add software first. And we're now going to go to the edit software. We can customize the scope of this software. So specifically, I want to target some hosts. I want it to be self-service so my end users can reach this software and install it themselves. And when I go to custom, you will see this labels dropdown picker right here. So initially we only had include any and exclude any. And so those two options are hosts that have any of the selected labels we will target, And then we had exclude any, which is hosts that do not have any of the selected labels we will target. Now what we are adding is this include all option, which is hosts that have all of the selected labels we will target. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and then notice that we cannot save, and that's because we have not selected our label that we are trying to target. So software will only be able to install on the hosts that have all of these labels included on it. So this is my dev laptop, and I am on a Intel Mac right now, and it is my Mac. So I want my host, which is my laptop, to be able to add this software using self-service. It must include all four or all three of these labels in order to be on self-service. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now when I go to my device page and I hit refresh, I should see 1Password on there. Now I made it available for this host because it included all three of those labels. Now let me go ahead and go back there and edit that again and include a label that my host does not have. And my host does not pass a Silicon Mac because it's Intel. So I'm going to click on that and hit save. And now what you're going to see is my host does not include all of those labels, therefore it will not be targeted to install this software. So I'm going to go back to my device page and I hit refresh, and you will see that the 1Password option is immediately removed from here. If you wanted to, you can also go to edit and you could change from include all to include any. And this software will be available for install for hosts that have any of these labels. And since my Mac passes 3 out of the 4, it does have any of these labels, it should go back and show me the option to add 1Password. So I'm going to click save. And then I hit refresh. And there it is.
And he also built out adding this for GitOps. So if you are a GitOps user, you can go ahead and use the same documentation for labels include any and exclude any to set this as well. All right, and then I'm going to move on to the second feature that Haziel worked on. I did the front end of this and Haziel did the back end of this. And this is 39063, which is surfacing the host Apple Business Manager assignment.
Hey everybody, this is 39063. We are surfacing the host Apple Business Manager assignments. The goal of this story is, as an IT admin, I want to see a timestamp and errors for the last time Fleet assigned a host's automatic enrollment profile so that I can troubleshoot migration issues. So let's go ahead and take a look at the UI. Now you can see on the dashboard page that we will have an extra card here showing Apple Business Manager's issues. This card will only be shown if there are any issues. And this gives you quick visibility into any devices that might be having trouble with their profile assignments. Basically, when the management system is trying to push a configuration profile to a device through Apple's infrastructure and something doesn't go quite right. So if you go ahead and click on this, you can see I have my iPad here as an example. It is returning a throttled profile assignment. And you can also see that underneath the MDM status with this icon here. And let's go ahead and click into my iPad to get some more information. In this host details page, you can go to the host vital section, and under MDM status, you can see that my MDM is on and it's company owned, that there is an error icon here. If you click on this, you are open to an MDM status modal where you can get some more information about your host. So here you can see when the profile was assigned. You can also see when the profile was pushed, and you can see the current status of the profile. The status here says pushed, which means that the profile was successfully delivered to the device. But you can also see other values like empty, where no profile has been assigned, assigned where it has registered a profile, but it hasn't been pushed, or removed, where the profile was intentionally removed from the device. This fourth row here is conditional based on whether we detect a profile assignment error. So this error is any issue during the push process. So in any case, this one says throttled, and that just means that Apple is temporarily limiting how many profile push requests can go through at once. This usually clears up, I believe it was after 24 hours from when it was throttled, so I have 6 more hours. When you hover over MDM status, you can view all hosts that have the same MDM status, so this one is on and company owned. Also, if you hover over your profile assignment error, you can view all hosts, and that will take you to any hosts that also have the issue of being throttled as well. Other issues that you might see in this modal could be failed which is basically the push request didn't succeed due to a configuration or communication error. And then also there's not accessible where the device isn't reachable and maybe it's offline or it's unable to check in with the MDM server. What else? So altogether, this provides a better at a glance view of each device's MDM health and the state of its last profile assignment. This profile assignment section is available for all Apple devices. This modal is available for Windows and Android as well, but it will only show you this top section right here because this profile assignment is specific for Apple Business Manager. And thank you. And then I have one last video. It's separate because I use the same test device to show that off. Let's go ahead and click on video 2. And for this one, this is for a pending host. So what would a pending host look like? Hey everybody, as a part of this story of servicing host Apple Business Manager assignments, we have updated some of the UI for pending hosts. So currently when you're looking at the host table here, you can see at your MDM status that you can have a host that is pending. We made it a little bit easier and we added the pending status to our status dropdown. And since this is an MDM enrollment status, we have an MDM enrollment status pill over here, which you can see that this is a host that has been ordered using Apple Business Manager, and it will automatically enroll into Fleet and be turned on when it's unboxed. So originally you had to go to the dashboard, scroll down to the MDM section and go to status in order to see the pending status, but now you're able to get there from this dropdown here. And then one other addition that we've done for pending hosts is we are allowing you to click on the host itself to get some of the details. So a lot of the details will not be here if the host has not checked in before, but in which case we have added the MDM status modal here so you can see the same UI consistent across all hosts for hosts that have MDM. And you can also see your pending status here. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. And then next up, we've got Ian.
Hey there. Before I hop in here, some credit for Python package stuff to Alan for getting an initial PR up and then having Jonathan take that across the line. Anyway, today I'm going to chat through a feature that Jonathan built out. He's off today. As a Fleet maintained app catalog maintainer, I want to override a query for the patch policy outside of Fleet release so I can fix a query if it's broken and have it available for Fleet instances immediately. This takes the existing patch policy behavior that we added in 4.83 and pulls it into the manifest files that we've had since last year on Fleet Maintained Apps v2, which we launched concurrent with Fleet Maintained Apps for Windows. The big draw of this is there are cases across our app library where we need to make minor tweaks to some of these installation queries to make sure that they don't false positive or false negative, particularly on the Windows side. And rather than trying to get that information into the Fleet server and potentially wait a release and QA cycles, etc., to have that land, we can just push manifest updates and move that intelligence to the repository and ingestion functionality of Winget or Homebrew that we have there. Again, we already had this for installation queries, but the patch queries are new to this. As a decent example here, we have the Adobe Reader manifest. This exists query has existed for a while, and then this patch query is new. So you'll note here this publisher bit. We actually don't have that information broadcast back to the Fleet server, so we have a little bit less precise policies right now for these and not really an easy way to get that information to the server. But through the power of looking at the Winget manifest and then being able to build the queries, directly as part of that manifest generation process, we can do things like this at the publisher and basically build this query on top of this one. That's going to come in even more handy as there's some cleanup we're doing around software that includes the version number in the reported name that OS query picks up, so that we can make sure that that we're correctly detecting when something is installed and is in need of an update. There's some follow-on PRs there. This also kind of 2020 hindsight, leading up to 483, there were a number of cases where we had to kind of last minute tweak our queries that were baked into Fleet server. And fortunately, we found those before release, but this allows us to respond a lot more quickly to cases where something either across the board or on a specific app wasn't quite right. And that is all I've got for that one. Back to you, George.
All righty. Thank you for presenting that, Ian. That concludes the software features for this sprint. And back to you, Luke.
Thank you. Software and MDM, great stuff in the release. And I'm going to hand it over to Sharon for security and compliance and orchestration.
Thank you, Luke. Great work by MDM and software. We'll start with team, maybe reminding everyone what the recovery lock password is and the new ability to rotate it. Take it, team, please.
All right. This is a follow-up to last release's recovery lock password feature. I will play the video.
As an IT admin, I want the recovery lock password to be automatically rotated so that I can be confident that passwords aren't being reused without having to manually rotate each password myself. For those of you remember, the recovery lock password feature was released last release, and it can be enabled here. Recovery lock password. So that is already enabled in my test machine here. You can see the recovery lock password is already set. It's verified. And I can show the recovery lock password here. Now, the intent of recovery lock password is to prefer it to be a one-time use password. So it makes sense here to rotate that automatically. And if you notice the timestamp here, there's a new note section. This release, the timestamp is from an hour from now. So the password will now be automatically rotated in an hour. I can close this prompt. However, I can choose to rotate immediately, and that will rotate it immediately, and it will not get rotated again in an hour. For now, I will close this, and for the magic of demos, I'm going to do some timestamp manipulation in the background so we don't have to wait an hour. Okay. I'm going to trigger this again. This is a background job that triggers all the recovery lock commands. You don't have to do it, it's not a requirement, but for demo purposes, it's very handy. I refresh the page here. You will now see Fleet triggered rotation recovery password for this host. And that's how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, team. And next we have Dante presenting allowing IT admin to resend Android certificate to a specific host. Dante, take it.
Hey, so this is the ticket, allow IT admin to resend Android certificate to specific host. As an IT admin, I want to resend an Android certificate to a specific host so that I can more easily troubleshoot issues. What this allows us to do is resend Android certificates manually instead of waiting for the renewal date to come around. You can see here in Fleet, we've got 4 certificates installed on this device. You can see here as well. We can check the details of each certificate if we go in here. For example, cert 123. We've got the UUID 412 and the serial number is 26. What we can then do if we want to resend the certificate manually is click this resend button. We're then going to see we're in a state enforcing pending. We're going to go over here and quickly restart the app so I can force a refresh. Normally this would of course happen on a timer. And we'll go check the app again. It's not happened yet. This might take a second. Try killing the app one more time. Sometimes it's not instantaneous, unfortunately, because we rely on the Google services. There you go. See, it's verified again, which means the certificate's been fetched. If we look now, yep, it's no longer 416, it's now A69 with serial number 27. That means the certificate's been renewed, and we have a fresh certificate on this device. Thanks a lot.
And thank you, Dante. And next we'll go to Konstantin. Konstantin will show us the update for Ubuntu systems, taking information vulnerabilities from OVAL instead of, from OSV instead of OVAL. Konstantin, please take it.
Hey all. I am demoing the real version of this feature. I don't know if everyone remembers from last sprint demos, but there was a POC that was demoed. Now we have the real version here. It will be released in the next release, and it is basically transitioning us from the oval feed to OSV. It is an optional feature that is opt-in by default, and if users decide that they do not like the new feed, they can opt out of it, but it will be on by default. I'm going to start from the vulnerabilities repository. This is where all the magic happens. The vulnerabilities repository produces release artifacts that we use in the Fleet server. Like you can see the NVD release artifacts here. And then the new ones that are present here are the OSV Ubuntu prefix ones. It's done by Ubuntu version and by date. So this is the newest version for Ubuntu 24.04 or Ubuntu 18.04, etc. And the Fleet server pulls these down and runs the vulnerability scanning. I will not do the vulnerability scanning live here. So my Fleet server is not on, but I have ran it here. You can see there's quite a bit of output because I have the debug log out, but I had just ran this before the demo here. And we can take a look at some of the results on my local machine. So I have 16 Linux machines that were generated, and they have a variety of different softwares that were generated with OS Query Perf. And you can see that they have quite a few vulnerabilities. I've made sure that we pick software that was vulnerable to test it out. And you can see here, we can filter by vulnerable software. And these are coming from OSV. Ooh, that's a bad one, huh? But as you can see, we have quite a few vulnerabilities here, and it is now going to be the default way we start doing more Linux vulnerability scanning. That's it.
Nice. Love it. And stay tuned for next sprint where we are going to do the same for Red Hat. And moving on to Victor. Victor actually has a few features, but the first one is when we remove a configuration profile from the server, from the Fleet server, we'll also remove them from the host. And Victor, take it from there and present the other things as well.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. Yes, so we've been helping the MDM team quite a bit this sprint. And yes, this first one is a big one to get us to parity with Apple, and it turned out to be a bit more complex than originally anticipated. But let's show the demo first before talking about the complexities. We're going to be adding a major new feature for Windows device management to match our Apple capabilities, and that is when we remove a profile from Fleet, we will actually remove those settings from the Windows device itself. Explicitly removing them, switching teams, deleting teams, all of that matching our Apple capabilities. So the user story, as an IT admin, I want to remove the Windows configuration profile and to actually stop enforcing deleted settings on the host so that I can make sure that my organization decides to change company policies. Those are same for newly enrolled and already existing hosts. All right, so what does that mean? Let's go here. We have a host. It has the setting, maximum device lock timeout. So if I go to that host, I can run a command to see that setting, and that setting is 10. So now, if I go to Controls, OS Settings, Demo Team, and I actually delete this profile, I delete it, I go back to the host, it is pending right now. So to speed this up, I'm going to go do a manual sync over here, jump back here, and the setting is gone. So now I can go here and check, and we see that on the host itself, it returned to its default value. That's the feature in a nutshell. We are updating the documentation a little bit in the custom OS settings, where we're talking about a little bit more about how it's done. So it is best effort. So there are some CSPs that do not support the delete command. So it is best effort. If that means if something fails, then we simply remove it. That's it for the feature. All right, so let's talk about some complexities related to that. First of all is CSPs. In Apple, when you have a profile, it's one thing. So once you remove it, that whole thing is removed. But in Windows, a profile can have multiple CSPs. So we need to parse each one of those CSPs and figure out if it needs to be removed. And one reason it might not need to be removed is because it's a duplicate. So we do allow duplicate CSPs. So we can't just willy-nilly remove every CSP because maybe there's another profile that already has that CSP. Another thing is labels. We have to cross-reference CSPs whether in regards to labels. So that means the removal actually has to happen per host because each host can have different labels. So this is a quite complex feature. I did update the docs. There is some caveats there, and I also filed a follow-up story regarding our handling of duplicate CSPs, so to make life easier for IT admins. All right, let's move on to the next one. Yeah, we've been working a lot on Android certificates, getting that working. So one of the things, I guess I'll just roll the demo. We'll see what I talk about there. In this feature, we're adding retries for Android certificates. So the scope of this story is Android. As an IT admin deploying configuration profiles, I want Fleet to retry up to 3 times so I can be confident my end users will get the settings, such as certificates, without having to manually resend. So let's take a look at how it looks like in Fleet. So I have my Android device. So we have enabled this host activity section over here, and you can see some activities here. So resending, which is another feature we're adding, so that shows up in the activity feed, and then failure to install and installations also show up in the feed. So if we click on failure to install, we'll see some details here. And in our case, we send a few certificates. So let's focus on this one, 7Y, it failed. So as we can send it recently, so as you can see, it failed to install initially, and then it failed to install 3 more times with approximately 15 minutes before retries here. So that is how retry works. It retries initial one plus 3 more until it finally shows up as failed. Before that, it shows up as pending. Also notice that when you resend, it only tries once. So we tried to resend cert 6, it only tried once, so it did not retry. That is how it also works on Apple profile retries. And that's pretty much it. So customers will get more reliable delivery of their certificates for Android. All right, that's Android retries. And I guess a similar feature, which I actually did before Android, so I wonder if I'm going to repeat some stuff here, was Apple configuration profile retries. So let's go ahead and look at that one. In this feature, we're increasing the Apple configuration profiles retry from 1 to 3 times. As an IT admin deploying Apple configuration profiles, I want Fleet to retry failed profile installations up to 3 times so that I can be confident my end users will get the settings, such as certificates, without having to manually resend. And the reason this is important for our customers is because sometimes the CAs or the network connections have issues. We decide to increase our retries from 1 to 3. So how does this look? So on this machine, I deployed a profile, a skip payload that ended up failing. And the way you can tell if retry is happening is you go into the activity, show MDM commands, and then you would see the activities for these retries. 1, 2, 3, 4 initial one, and 3 retries. If you want to go into details, one thing to note is these retries happen pretty quickly. As you can see, they happen, cron runs every 30 seconds. So the retries actually happen within 30 seconds, which is different how it happens on Android, where it happens once every 15 minutes. And that just lines up with how Android agent work. It runs internally, it checks in every 15 minutes. Go into here, you need to decode this base64 payload to see the full profile. And that's basically it. All right. And then last one, also certificate related. In this video, we show how we're able to throttle certificate requests to ease CA server load. As an IT admin, I want Fleet to throttle requests for certificates for Apple hosts to my CA so that I can avoid overloading it when deploying certificates. So we have this new configuration, MDM certificate profiles limit, which is 0 by default. So it's actually 100 by default. In my case, I have set it to 1. So that means per batch, only one host will get this CA profile. Any non-CA profiles they get right away, but this CA profile, which is being proxied by Fleet, so that's the important thing, it's only CA profiles that are being proxied by Fleet, will be throttled. So how does that look like in the logs? So in here I have logs, I have a team that has a bunch of hosts, an assigned team, so it's got a bunch of hosts. So if I go to logs, what happened when I deployed this profile, I get this message. So this profile UUID was throttled and these host UUIDs did not receive the certificates. And then we're running every 30 seconds, this batch runs, this reconciler runs, and by the end, the last message is only one host left. So by the end, all of them get their CA certificate profile. So let's go ahead and try to delete it. So let's go back to controls, US settings, and delete. So now we go to hosts, and they all should be pending deletion. So they should all be removing it right away. And so this will get removed once the host actually checks in. Let me go ahead and wait for the host to check in. All right, and the host has checked in. Oops. There we go. The host has checked in, and it has removed that profile. That's it. And that's it for me. Back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Victor. And the chat is so funny today. I wish our customers and everyone could see the chat. But anyway, we'll just proceed like that. Thank you, Victor, and thank you, security and compliance team. We'll move to orchestration team. We'll start with Juan and Nico showing a nice report page, main page showing reports. Either Nico or Juan can take it.
Yeah, see if the demo gods are with me today. Hey folks, today I'm gonna be demoing a new feature where we added a completely new page where you can visualize host reports. So the user story reads as follows. As an IT admin looking at the reports section on the host details page, I want to see the data from the first result so that I can use reports like I use extension attributes in Jamf. Okay, so if we go to a host details page, the first thing you're going to notice is that we removed the reports card, which I think was like around here, and we now have a new reports tab. If I click it, now you won't see anything because I don't have no report results in my database. So let me just go ahead and insert some test data real quick. Okay, so from the top here you can see the total number of reports. I'm gonna get back to this little toggle here later, but moving to the right, here you have your sorting controls, right? And here you have a filter control that allows you to filter by name. So let's do, if I can type one row, so that works. And here we have our list of results. So for each result, we render some information about the report, like its name, the time it was last executed, the description, and the section here on the middle, it meant to render the first report result, if available. So for example, the first report that I have here, when it ran, it didn't return any results on the host. Given that scenario, we render something like this, right? So if I go here and click here, show details, you can see that there are like no results for this particular report. So another variant you can have is that if you have a report like this one, and it just returns a single row of results, like this one here, right? So here in the middle, this is better visualized here. You're gonna see like a grid type rendering of different properties of the result. And again, you can click on the actions drop-down menu here and navigate to the results. So another variant you can have is a report that returns like many results, like this one. And here in this little card here, we show the number of additional results, which you can visualize if you click here, right? And another variant we can have is a clip report, right? So a clip report happens when we get results that are over the report capacity setting, right? So in this case, for this report on this host, I was able to only store 49 results before we hit the cap limit. So in this scenario, we show, as before, all the report characteristics plus this little icon here that tells us that the report is clipped. Another scenario is that we have a report, right? And this report ran over multiple hosts. And on the other host, we reached the capacity before we could store any results for this particular host. Yeah, so that was a mouthful, but hopefully it makes sense. So yeah, like in this case, we show the user that we're still waiting results for this host and that the report is clipped. And finally, we can have a scenario where I just have a report where I haven't received any results yet. Maybe it's like a schedule query and like the schedule is not executed yet. So this is how we let the user know of that scenario. One thing to notice with the sorting is that we always order the reports with no results at the end, regardless of the sorting options. So you can see here that it doesn't matter what I select. These two options always go to the bottom of the list. So back to the toggle here. So what this allows me to do is to also fetch reports, whether we have configured the report not to store data, so discard data, and where their logging mechanism is not set to snapshot. For example, this one, when I created the report, the discard data option was selected. And from this one, for this one, when I created the report, I selected a differential logging type. And for these two scenarios, since we are not storing data for the report, we let the user know as well with this little widget here. Yeah, another thing to visualize, to see, is what happens if I disable storing results in my global settings. So if I do that and go here, what we can see is that the toggle disappeared, and by default we return all reports, right, regardless of whether they store data or not. Okay, cool. That concludes the demo. Please do let me know if you have any questions, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As Lucas said, this was heavy design work and a lot of cooperation, design, UI, and backend. So thank you, Rachel, Juan, and Nico for this.
Ron, I'll just add one thing for the folks watching this is that we're really looking for feedback on this from folks who are used to other concepts like extension attributes, and we have a lot more we're going to do here. Just if you're watching this and you have an opinion or feedback, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And it's so easy to say reports instead of query result, query that. So reports are just one word. It's easier. Nice. Okay. Next, I don't think we need to introduce conditional access. I think we all know what it is. And now we have it for Entra. We have it for Windows as well as Mac. And Lucas will present it.
Yeah. Hi, folks. So I'll demo this story. As an IT admin, I want to use Entra's conditional access on my Windows host so that I can block my end users from accessing comparable resources if they are failing policies, meaning non-compliant. So a few months ago, we implemented this feature for macOS, and now it's the time to add support for Windows devices, which turns out like it's obvious, but it's simpler because Microsoft features, Entra, will obviously be simpler to implement on Windows devices, right? Because it's like they build the device. It was way simpler on Windows than it was for macOS. Just some item there. Let me show you real quick. I'm not gonna go into details, but this whole everything that's not red, that was the macOS compliance like architecture to integrate with Entra. For setting compliance status for macOS devices, we had to go through Intune, and then Intune would send that information to Entra. For Windows, we just have to send an API request to Entra. And also, we don't need for macOS, we needed company portal installed on the device and some kind of configuration profile for platforms. That's not necessary. Windows is built in, so that will be simpler, as I will show. Let's start with this is a VM, Windows VM. The user will have to be logged in to Entra. Obviously, for this feature to work, the device will have to be logged into Entra, meaning that you will have to join the device. There's an option there to join the device. Here already I have Foobar, some kind of test account, logged into Entra. And then Fleet will take that information from using some queries, but let me show this here. So I have this device. This is the VM. It has a device ID, which Fleet will use this to set the compliance status. And right now the device is compliant, right? So we're gonna demo real quick. So this device has a few policies. Let's go to policies. This is a team. Going to conditional access. This is a new thing. It used to be that you could only select macOS policies. Now you can select Windows policies. And given the confusion, we also add the icon of the OS so that, for example, why this is disabled because it's Chrome only. This is Linux and Chrome only, so you cannot really select this for conditional access. So we have a few selected here. And I'll go to one of these policy tests for conditional access. And I'm going to simulate a failure, right? Just for demo purposes. So I'll save this and then I'll have the host refetch. So once the host reports the policies, it's pretty fast because we don't go through Intune, but it directly to Entra. So we have a failure here. And if we go to Entra, I think it should be pretty instant. It was yes, and now it should be no. If demo gods allow, it says no now. So Fleet basically set that information from Fleet policies. Now let's see what happens on the device. This user had a Copilot app here. Let me just see. There's some work to do that I'll show, but so I had Copilot here. I want to use this app. Obviously, it knocked me out. Okay, there we go. I think I can, for example, if I try this, okay, there we go. I didn't do anything. It's now telling me that I'm not compliant. Now there's some work to do here. We have contacted Microsoft because for macOS, we have a way to put a link somewhere here so that you know what to do next. For Windows, there doesn't seem to be anything. So we have sent them a question around this. Because right now the user, what do? You will need to know that you have Fleet, go to my device, and then know that you have a failing policy, right? But it's not realistic. So we are gonna get some info from Microsoft and hopefully add a URL here to the fleetdm.com that explains you to do like this thing that you need to go to policies and fix that policy. I'm not gonna do this now, but once you fix a policy, I think this dialog just goes away and you can use the apps as usual. Docs are, so we had one docs here that I believe Rachel will add that information here, but originally I have Entra here. This was a big document, but it was macOS oriented. Rachel will and myself and Noah will update this to be like both Windows and Mac. And also, I believe we want to include Okta here. But anyways, there's a big change in this document coming. Yep, that's it.
Thank you, orchestration team. And Luke, back to you and 20 minutes for first impressions. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
I think that'll probably do it for the call. So everyone, please check the agenda to see all the great bug fixes and other improvements that are going out with this release. Next, we're going to go to the first impressions working group. You only get one chance to make a good first impressions, and that's what Scott's been focused on. So I'll hand it over to him.
All right, I'll try to get through all this stuff. A lot of good stuff this week. So the first story we want to talk about here is 41345 Fleet Control New. As a new fleet user or GitOps workshop attendee, I want to run Fleet Control New at the base of my GitOps directory that creates files prototyped. Okay, so this actually mentions shells generate GitOps, and it says that the reason for this is so that we can generate a GitOps repo without using sales or npm. The real reason for this tool in the first place is that we're migrating away from our fleet-GitOps repo that we have been using for our GitOps workshops and as our kind of best practice for implementing GitOps with Fleet. This was a separate repo we maintained that we had new users clone or fork and then pull down and use as their basis for their GitOps. But that kind of violated the Fleet ethos of monorepo with some real repercussions, including that sometimes we would change files in that repo and we had tests that would break unexpectedly in the main Fleet repo, or for people who were using an older version of the repo where the action was more tied into it, it could have effects on their GitOps runs. So what we have done in this story is pull all of that into our main repo, into a tool called Fleet Control New, which embeds all of the templates and our best practices, which have also been updated as part of this effort. And so now when you want to start your new GitOps deployment, you can go and type Fleet Control New. And it's going to ask you one question, which is the name of your organization. As always, my test organization is called Cool Beans. And it outputs just some kind of next steps for you. But by default, it's going to create this new directory called IT and Security, just like the one that we have for our dog food instance. And if you take a look at what actually goes into there, let's make this a little bigger. You can see that it's all of our best practice stuff, but with some nice new comments that Mike and Noah worked really hard on, and Alan, I believe, as well, and Harry, to get all this stuff a little bit more user-friendly. It has your Fleet URL in there. It has your organization name that we put in. And if you were to run this on a fresh instance, it would get you to our new best practice. It's got all of the platforms and all the folders that we expect, a few labels in there. So I could demonstrate this and push it up using GitOps, but actually a better way, I think, to show what's going on is to demo the next story, which is new Fleet instances use GitOps templates. So as a Fleet user, I want my new Fleet instance to have the same defaults out of the box as Fleet Control New so that my Fleet looks the same after my first GitOps run. And the idea here is that when you start your first Fleet instance and you sign up and you put in your new user, it's actually going to now in the background run this Fleet Control New command and Fleet Control GitOps on the server so that the end result is exactly the same as what you'd get from pushing these files up. So we can demonstrate here, and shout out to Victor for coming up with an easier way to have multiple Fleet stacks running on your laptop at once. So this one is running on 8800. So if I put in my stuff real quick here. Cool beans. Oh no! I blew it. I must have messed up my proxy. So the end result of this is that you will get the same best practice files that we have for Fleet Control New. I'll try to get a better demo of this. Worked a minute ago. That's the demo gods for you. But I think we can move on for sake of time to hopefully not having other messed up demos. So the bigger story this sprint was GitOps mode exceptions. As an IT admin using GitOps, I want to opt into mapping software labels and or secrets outside of Git via the UI or API so that I can help my team ramp up with GitOps or managing parts of Fleet with GitOps. And then as team gets more comfortable, move into it more and more. So the background for this is, as we've discussed, I feel like on these calls before, when you're using GitOps, the best practice is that your configuration files are your source of truth, and you can determine the state of your Fleet instance just by looking at those files, and everything, all your configuration can live in those files. But this does present some friction for migrations, for new customers that, as part of the First Impressions group, we're trying to overcome. So what this looks like in practice is that, first of all, if you log back in here, I think the problem is that trying to run two instances at once actually has some conflicting login
Yeah, I need to be in
issues.
incognito mode because they share cookies.
So maybe I can go back, if we have time, maybe I can go back and then demonstrate the other one. So if you go into your Fleet instance now and go to settings and change management, you'll see we now have this new exceptions setting. And these take place, they're invalid whether you have GitOps mode on or not. And how the exceptions work is if you have an exception on for one of these keys, then you can leave that key out of your GitOps configuration files with no effect. It won't clear out any, for example, for labels. If I have labels accepted and I leave labels out of my GitOps and I run GitOps, it won't clear out my labels. If I do put labels in when I have the exception on, it's going to give me an error, which we can demonstrate now. So going back to this one here. So I have, actually, I'll show the files first. It's my demo files, and I have a bunch of labels in here. And if I try to run this right now, it's going to say error labels accepted from GitOps management. This looks like actually an older version of the error. We're going to be updating this shortly for even more context, but it tells you have to remove the labels key from your GitOps file or disable the exception in Fleet settings. So I can remove this now. And just to show there's no tricks up my sleeve, if I go and show you, I do have these labels in here now. And if I comment this out and also have to comment out the secrets because that also has exceptions on right now. Oops. I think I might have, didn't comment out all of them. There we go. So the dry run is good. And if I now run this, you see my labels are still there. If I turn the exceptions off for something, oops, sorry. And then run the same thing, it's going to delete all of those labels, which is what we expect for a GitOps run. Oop. Oh, these are team-based labels. So the general idea with exceptions is that if you leave them out, it's going to be a no-op if the exception is on. If you leave them on, then leaving that key out is going to clear that setting. And I think there's actually another story that kind of dovetails with this. So I can skip to that one for a second, which is don't clear manual label membership when host key is omitted from the YAML. This came in as a bug, but it's actually a similar feature that we were implementing. And that is that if you put these labels back for a second. So now you see I have this manual label and it has some hosts on it. And this was a point of friction for some customers that are managing the host assignments for labels outside of GitOps because they have an external system that applies the hosts to the labels using the API. And that becomes problematic when you have GitOps and say you have 1,000 hosts in here, and you'd have to either have an automated system that updates your YAML file for you, or you have to hand put these in. So we added the ability to just omit this key safely and have it not have any effect on the hosts in the label. if you leave the key in but leave it empty, it will still clear out those hosts. Okay, moving on, I think, to the last story in here, more of a quickie. Main tabs. When viewing all fleets, show workstations on controls. This one I think people are gonna, because this was an annoying thing when debugging and testing fleet as well. So when you go to controls now from your dashboard, it used to default to show in the unassigned team. It will now show the first team in the list, really the first team, the team with the lowest ID, which by our best practices is usually the workstations team. It shuttles unassigned to the bottom. And even better, when you go back to the dashboard, it defaults to all fleets. So you don't have to go up here and switch it back to all fleets to see your global activity, which I know I did a bunch of times a day. Looking at the chat. So now I can set webhook policy automations inline like other policy automations. Oh yeah, that's something I think we shipped in 483. And actually, Fleet Control New also was cherry picked in the 483. So we weren't able to demo it last time because it wasn't done, but it's actually live now. I think that's it. I feel like we missed one thing, which is, oh, I can show really briefly since it should be in my YAML file. We also, I'll put this in the demo doc, added the ability to use fleet managed apps in policy software automations by setting their slug. So previously, if you wanted to do this, here's my FMA install policy. Oh, so the automation for that policy has an FMA. This was all possible before, but when you generated the GitOps for this or tried to use GitOps for it, it would generate a hash, which is not a floating thing. That was only for one version. And we want these to be able to float with the FMA if it gets patched or updated. So now under install software, you can put fleet maintained apt slug, just like you can do for patch policies, and it will pick up the correct FMA for your policy. I think we got 10 minutes. What else we got?
It looks like Ian was volunteering to go over some quick wins and bug fixes. I'll hand it over to you, Ian.
Thanks. All right, got it. All right, first off, this is basically, let's call it 4 or 5 bugs in a trench coat of software display name and software names in general, and software ordering and setup experience installations. Landing in 484. Previously, we had software installers queued first, and then VPP, and then you would run through those, and then VPP apps would be queued afterwards. And those would be ordered in A to Z based on the actual software's name. With the display name support and other changes, we did want to switch to predictable ordering based on display names so that if you wanted something to install earlier, you just rename it. That wasn't working, and it was actually undocumented behavior that we had 2 sets of installs for any macOS hosts because you had your software titles and then your VPP apps all came after. I believe that was due to some limitations we had on verification of VPP apps previously. Those limitations no longer apply. So we're able to do a fair amount of cleanup here. There is some additional cleanup that is landing in 485 on macOS setup experience cancellation stuff. There are a number of items around this flow that also basically hit the same code. So we'll wind up with a more predictable flow of setup experience where, for example, you have things showing as running one at a time rather than an entire group at a time with comparable performance as a result of these fixes. One quick note here, we had some feedback from customers and prospects of, hey, do you work with newer versions of Redis that are actually getting feature updates as well as security fixes? We had bumped our kind of default Redis testing setup to 6 point whatever a while back, but folks are now using 7 or 8 or Valkey versions. We went ahead and ran CI as a one-off against Redis 7, Redis 8, Valkey 7, and Valkey 8. Everything passed with flying colors. This ticket will be followed up I believe, later to actually add those to our test matrix, but we are already running Redis 7 in production in various of our cloud instances and on dog food. So if you want to upgrade to that version, if you're running on-prem, you can certainly do that. We have plenty of test coverage in real environments for that. And as time goes on, we'll add that for Valkey and Redis 8. Finally, one thing that will be landing in 4.8.4 is configuration profiles. The MDM commands that add or remove those profiles will include profile name and status on success or fail. Don't have any demo for you quite yet for this, but that will be landing to resolve a couple of customer promises here. And so that is that. Thanks for giving me the floor.
And that's just for macOS.
That is just for macOS. The Windows profiles and such were out of scope here.
Cool. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate you showing that. And I'm going to wrap up a little bit early. I don't think we have time to get into more, but for anyone who wants to look at more quick wins and bug fixes, check out the doc. As always, lots of really good stuff there. Thank you to everyone who contributed, everyone who demoed, and everyone who hung out with us today. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.